A patient presents with fever, fatigue, and weight loss over the past 3 weeks or months, It is noted that she has anemia with increase in ferritin. UA shows proteinuria and red blood cell casts. What is the likely diagnosis here? A, SLE or lupus. B, ankylosing spondylitis. C, dermatomyositis, or D, polymyalgia rheumatica. Excellent. If you're saying A, you're absolutely correct. This is going to be lupus. I really want you to integrate this test-taking principle, and that is recognizing constitutional symptoms related to lupus. These patients are going to have an autoimmune attack or a type 3 hypersensitivity antigen antibody complexes that are going to be depositing that causes what? Multi-system involvement. So let's go through this. What are the HLA subtypes present, which explain the genetic predisposition? That is going to be small detail, but important, HLA-DR2 and HLA-DR3. What are the environmental factors which contribute to the pathophysiology of lupus? So there's genetic and then there's environmental. So things like UV light, things like drugs, which specifically procainamide, which is an antiarrhythmic, hydralazine, an antihypertensive. So say that they give you, hey, I give you that drug and now you have a lupus-like syndrome, what we call drug-induced lupus. So they give the drug and in the test question, they say joint pain or a rash. You're going to get what serum blood test? That's an antihistone antibody, which is associated with drug-induced lupus. What is the underlying pathophysiology of lupus? Well, there's type 3 and type 2. So let's go through this. Type 3 hypersensitivity, remember, that is going to be related to antigen antibody complexes that are going to deposit in tissues such as the skin, the kidneys, the joints, and the blood vessels, and cause activation of complement. Once you activate complement, that tissue becomes angry. Remember, the kidneys are going to have this really important pathophysiologic mechanism. And that's why you have a positive immunofluorescence, because you are going to have antigen antibody complexes that are going to be depositing in the kidney. Now, the type 2 hypersensitivity pathophysiologic model is going to be why in test questions for lupus especially, you are going to have a decreased WBCs, decreased hemoglobin and hematocrit, and decreased platelets because it's autoantibodies to different types of cells. So just as a immunological tie-in and test-taking principle, remember, fever, fatigue, and weight loss usually means that there's a chronic inflammation process going on. IL-1, IL-6, TNF-alpha are going to be elevated. So think about lupus, think about rheumatoid arthritis, think about some cancers as well. So when we think about lupus, let's go through the skin changes. And that is recognizing that these patients have that malar rash that spares the nasolabial folds. Patients with lupus can also have a specific type of lupus known as discoid lupus. And in discoid lupus, you have like craters in your skin, alopecia, and hypopigmentation. Patients with lupus may have oral ulcers. And so oral ulcers like aphthous ulcers are going to be seen in lupus, but you also want to differential diagnosis that with, Crohn's disease. Ooh, that's a good one. And then finally, remember that patients with lupus are going to have Raynaud's as a vasospasm type of skin change. Let's go through the vascular abnormalities. Remember, type 3 deposition. In the vascular abnormalities, you're going to have really important tie-in, and that is antiphospholipid syndrome. This is really important here. In antiphospholipid syndrome, you end up getting autoantibodies and cellular deposits to your phospholipid membrane. That causes what? That causes endothelial cell injury. And that endothelial cell injury is actually really important for us to recognize. Why is that? Well, because the endothelial cell injury integrates with GenPath, Virchow's triad, you become very, very hypercoagulable. And you can see not only thromboembolic phenomena, such as PE, DVTs, but you can get placental abnormalities. And that's why patients with lupus can present as recurrent abortions. So what's high yield for us to recognize here is that patients with antiphospholipid syndrome can have actually abnormalities in their PTT. Their PTT may be elevated, which may make you think, there might be more bleeding. Actually, in antiphospholipid syndrome, this is paradoxical. The high PTT actually is going to correlate to a more hypercoagulable state when you're talking about antiphospholipid syndrome. From a hematologic standpoint, remember that you get a pancytopenia. And if you have things like low platelets, you're going to present in your test question with petechiae. And then lupus is an inflammation of what we call mucosal or serosal surfaces. So you could have pericarditis, for example, which can lead to pericardial effusions and even pericardial tamponade. Remember, electrical alternans, narrow pulse pressure. Patients who have lupus can get endocardial inflammation. And this is where you get vegetations on both sides of the valve. And that's what we call Liebman-Sachs endocarditis. And then finally, patients can have abnormal chest x-rays with lupus such that they have blunting of the costophrenic ankle, and that refers to the pleural effusions. The renal manifestations of lupus can be either I'm peeing blood or I'm peeing protein. If I'm peeing protein and I'm a lupus patient, primarily protein if I'm peeing, you're going to be thinking of membranous nephropathy. The way I remember it is I am a member of the lupus community. So membranous nephropathy, in which you have basement membrane deposits of antigen antibody. Remember, type 3 hypersensitivity. And then your basement membrane ends up freaking out. And Pathoma does a great job with this, in which then you have a spike and dome, a spike and dome, a spike and dome. And that is going to refer to the mesangial and basement membrane proliferation you get with membranous nephropathy. The nephritic syndrome related to lupus is going to be what we call diffuse proliferative glomerulonephritis, which on electron microscopy shows these friable wire looping capillaries on your glomerular biopsy. Another integration for us to go through is this one. A 50-year-old male presents with a urine analysis significant for red blood cells. He has been having fever, weight loss, and fatigue over the past 3 months, so constitutional symptoms. 2 weeks prior, he was admitted for cough with bloody secretions. What do you think is the likely diagnosis here? So I kind of jumped from nephritic syndrome to tell you, here is a UA that is also suggesting a nephritic condition. And now this patient also has hemoptysis. And so we're worried about Goodpasture syndrome, or anti-glomerular basement membrane antibody disease. This is a classic, what we call hemoptysis hematuria syndrome. So what is the likely mechanism here? Well, remember that this is a type 2 hypersensitivity reaction to the glomerular basement membrane, which is type 4 collagen, which affects both the lung, causing hemoptysis, and the kidney, which causes hematuria. Now, over the next few months, the same patient presents with very bad kidney function and increasing BUN and creatinine. He is scheduled for renal biopsy. What is it likely going to show? And so you recognize that patients who have, for example, this pauciimmune glomerulonephritis, or what we call this anti-GBM antibody disease, Goodpasture syndrome, they can get what we call rapidly progressive crescenteric glomerulonephritis. And these crescents are going to be made up of two things: fibrin and macrophages. So RPGN, rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis, is going to be a spectrum of disease. You can have lupus and have diffuse proliferative glomerulonephritis that then progresses in your exam question to rapidly progressive crescenteric glomerulonephritis. Same thing with Goodpasture syndrome, as well as other hemoptysis and hematuria syndromes.